Okay, just gonna do a bit of painting. I'm just trying to and get all of the steel parts done. On my knight, now you can see here I'm using a large basing brush, although quite often I will use an airbrush because this is kind of attached to a part that I've already airbrushed a particular colour. It's not really an option, so I'm going to have to hand brush this part, which yeah, it's a bit of a process. Now what I am doing is I've got my wet palette just by my side, because aside from anything else I want to make sure that I don't get this too thick. I have to admit, I think granite steel is a bit of a pain, unfortunately, I find, for coverage. See, it's going to be quite streaky to begin with. It's a bit of a process, but you know, I want to make sure that it works exactly how I want it. I'm using my wet palette over here just to kind of make sure that I'm not applying too much all at once. Unfortunately, with particularly silvers, if you just, well, like with most paints to be quite honest, but I do tend to find it's pretty bad with any kind of silvers. If you're not patient, you just end up with, you know, great big blobs of paint everywhere. That's not what I want. I want nice and smooth on this one. Trying to make sure as well that my flow is in a single direction where possible. Okay, now getting a bit closer to the gun barrel here, so I'm going to have to slow it down a bit. Glad I've got my new basing brush actually for this part. I'm trying to get right up to that without actually hitting the green, the actual main part of it, because that's needs to stay that green, olive greenish colour. It's one of the good things about a brush, if it's like this, if it's in this kind of direction, this angle, makes it so much easier to not accidentally touch the wrong part. Okay. Okay, got pretty good coverage actually first time round. So what I do is I let that dry, because you always tend to find that when it dries you'll get a bit of streakiness. I'm probably going to make sure that I go over this twice in total. You can see I'm already starting to build up the right colour. Okay, gonna move on to the next layer now. So again, probably won't need as much paint hopefully on this layer. It's just really more about thickening that paint. Definitely tend to find that if you use a good grey, a nice mid-tone grey on a lot of steel colours, in fact a lot of metallic colours in general, you will often get a very nice colour. Hopefully you can see there, it's coming out quite alright. So, got a nice solid colour there because of that, which is great. That's exactly what I wanted to go for. So the next, what I'm actually doing as well is between sort of doing the silver on any other parts that I can think of. So I'll be doing that quite a bit over the next few hours. Unfortunately, it's going to be a very long job because I've got lots of little areas to paint up, a lot of additional silver greys to do. So this should be a nice fun process, and then after I'm done with that, I'm going to get my green over the top to make it a metallic green. So just going to stop that there for now and then get my brush cleaned up. Then I'm going to get my orc flesh contrast and I'm going to make that metallic. Okay, now I'm going to use my contrast to get that metallic effect over it. Now, as last time, I need to just kind of get this a bit thinned out to get the effect that I want. One of those lovely things about contrast paint, to go over quite well, but by the same logic, if you want to get the right tone, sometimes you're having to do quite a few layers. Okay, so unfortunately, as with most things, you can't just do one layer and hope for the best. Right, now it's going to be quite a few goes at this because you can see the final colour I want is quite a deep green, but I'd rather not rush this at all. Give it, you know, a chance to kind of dry off each time. I've already undercoated this, so I might as well do it while I'm here. I've actually only recently just started using a real wet palette, oddly enough, so I'm still not sure I'm using it right. I'm not going to pretend, look, check it out. I'm not even certain that I'm using that right yet, to be quite honest, so we shall see as we go. That silver bit there, I'm not going to do that in metallic green. I want that to, I'm going to use a wash to make it more bronzed. I've got one in mind, one of my favoured ones. Wildwood contrast is going to go over that. It makes a lovely bronze over silver. Okay, now I'm going to try and get this colour on here a bit deeper now. I'm sure that if I had a bit more skill, I could quite happily make this, what's it called now, non-metallic metal, the whole thing, but unfortunately, you know, sometimes you just have to accept your skill level and go from there, though it is something I'd love to improve upon later on. Still, I like this effect, it looks nice. I think because Grey Knight is Grey Knight, yeah, it's called Grey Knight Steel, always comes across as having a slight blue quality to me. I find that as a base for this colour, it works rather well. There we go. I think that's exactly the colour that I want. Let's have a look here. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just get a shading brush. Let me find my shading brush. There it is. Okay, so here's my shading brush. I'm going to get a bit more of this stuff. I'm going to dab it a little bit, but I just want to make sure that I'm going into the shadow just a tiny bit here. Yeah. Again, a bit more of this, trying to get into these shadows, shaded parts, just to add a bit of depth. Okay, now get those brushes cleaned up. Whew. Okay, now I need to find my darker colour. So let me try and find just the right colour that I want here. Oh, I've misplaced my deep blue. Here it is, ultramarine contrast. I'm going to have to probably pop this onto my paint shaker, so I'm just going to pause this for a second. Highly recommend getting a paint shaker because they really do sort out your paints. Anyway, ultramarine contrast. Now, what I want to do with this is just create a little bit of what you might call a countertone. Gosh, just realised this paintbrush is not clean yet, is it? Where's my soap gone? I'm terrible at putting things down, I swear. I'm the worst. Always take care of your brushes, you know. Keep care of your brushes, make sure they're lovely and clean. I'll let that soak for a few minutes. Okay. Anyway, it's this brush that I'm using now anyway, but here we go. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get some of this. Again, I'm just going to tone it down a bit on my wet palette. I'm just going to pop it into these holes. Now I'm just going to very gently go under here and under here. Now, why am I doing this? Well, I want a bit of a shadow, and sometimes you don't want the shadow to be the same colour That's how I've personally found. I like to frequently make my shadows very different in colouring. Said it's not much, it's just more to create a colour that's almost counter to it. Now you'll notice, hopefully, as well, that I'm making the shading a bit heavier on the underside as well, because that's where the shadow will naturally fall. Just trying to get this to blend nicely. A bit more wetting of that, I think. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to very gently rub it. Just going to get a bit of water on my brush now. I just want that slight shadow. I don't want it too much of a shadow, because too much of a shadow won't look right. But just enough to give the impression of a change underneath. Okay, I'm going to get a bit more blue on my brush over here. Same again. I'll probably build that shadow up a few times actually, you know, not just accept it on the first go. But I do just want to give the impression of a darker colour underneath. Get a bit more on my brush, but again, make it nice and wet, basically glazing it on here. Right, now hopefully that's going to create just a minor darkness underneath the barrel. So it's not, we're not talking about a massive effect here, we're just talking about deeper around the rims, and then right underneath the barrel I've used the blue contrast, heavily watered down. It's probably very hard to see unfortunately due to the positioning of all my lights, but you've got a slight shading underneath. Okay, and that's how I want this. So I've gone a bit too much on this part here, it's annoying me. But there we go. As I say, unfortunately it's hard to see. It's not exactly light today in my office, but if I just try and get it into the natural light, you might just about be able to see a slight dullness on the underside. Not too much, I'm not overdoing it, but there we go. Okay, whew. So there we go, that is the basics of my metallic green. I think it looks nice. I like the colour that I've got on that one. And obviously I need to just do a little bit more touching up. Let me find a brush that's suitable for this little job now. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I've got some lead belcher here. And then what am I going to do with this lead belcher? Well, although it's a base, I'm actually going to use this to highlight a bit more. Again, get it nicely thinned down in just the right way. I'm basically going to edge around the rims. Again, I'm not gonna go underneath because I shaded underneath. Just around all the edges and nothing else. Just very gently along the top. And again, that's just to control where the shine comes from. Okay. Right, well, there we go. There's my basically my metallic green with a bit of shading, a bit of highlighting done on it just to add a tiny little difference. Just trying to make that tiny little spark of, you know, perfect colour on it. And hopefully you like that. And for my next video, I'm going to start trying my best to start adding, you know, a few more decals and a decent white trim. So thanks for watching, and please like and subscribe.